We'll wait a few minutes so we have everybody here before we kick it off. I just admitted several people, so welcome if you just joined, and we are introducing ourselves in the chat. If you can just take a moment before we get started and provide some background about yourself, your name, your role, institution, organization. And Crystal also added if you want to share your favorite color or something fun about yourself.
So it looks like we have the chat filling up. We have Bill from Missouri, or excuse me, Seattle. I didn't read the whole entire thing. James, Aaron, Janice, welcome, welcome. Andrew, Camden, Diego, welcome. James again, different James. Kelly, Judy, NECA, Kelly, again. Oh, wait, I'm reading last names or first names. Oh, Cassandra, your name is inverted. It threw me. But welcome everyone. For those of you coming in, we're just saying hello in the chat. Our name, our role, institution. I did say your favorite color, what you ate for lunch, if you're just so interested. And we're gonna get started in, I think, a few seconds, maybe a minute at the most. We're really excited to have you in this space to start these conversations and work on building our community. Super excited. So you had blue leftover pasta, Camden? How do we get blue pasta? No, I'm joking. It was a bad joke, but it was a joke. It was a bad joke, but it's a
I
joke.
have seen different colored pasta.
I don't know. Have I seen green pasta? I think someone probably does it for green eggs and ham type thing where you're dyeing everything green anyway. You know, educator. I get to see lots of colorful things when it comes to working with children. Oh, or spinach noodles. There we go. Those are green. See, forget my vegetables. Okay. All right, so I think that was about a minute. So let's go ahead and get it rolling. Because we have a lot jam-packed into the time that we have, and we want to focus a lot on the conversation spaces that we're aiming to build. So I am Crystal Chapman. I am one of your session facilitators. I am a professional learning and community manager for the Computer Science Teacher Association. So I help educators really dive deep into computer science education, and excited to be here with you. And then I'm going to let everyone else introduce themselves because I don't want to mess up a title. Valerie?
Oh, I'll be first. No issues. Hi, good afternoon, all. My name is Valerie Crawford Meyer. I am an educator. I always say I am a literacy person, but I am also computer science. I teach in Broward County Public Schools. I'm a VILS coach. I'm an ASU senior lab mentor. Now I'm a Embry-Riddle faculty, funny enough, today. Actually, I graduate on Saturday. So yes, aerospace engineering has just been added. I also facilitate for code.org, and I'm a member of Teach AI as well as the AI Engage Institute, Circles Fellow, and a whole lot of other stuff. And I thank you all for being here today, and let's engage that conversation. I'm going to pass it on to Alicia.
Hello, everyone. I am a third-year doctoral student at Vanderbilt. I'm part of the Engage AI Institute, studying mixed reality learning environments and how we might take that data, that multimodal data, and use AI to help us with interaction analysis at the moment. And I'm also a co-founder of DC for STEM. We provide an annual STEM fair and competition in the District of Columbia. So I kind of wear two hats today, but mostly wearing my practitioner hat today. Welcome, everyone. And NECA.
Good day. Thank you everyone for coming out. My name is Neka McGee. I'm an educator, former chief academic officer. I serve in Texas. And what else? I mean, I'm just excited. I mainly right now talk about AI for littles. My doctoral research was on artificial intelligence in education implementation in K-12 classrooms. And so I've been blessed and honored to be able to talk around the country about my work. So thank you so much. And I will head off to Cassandra Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. I've been emailing you, and I was really grateful to have this many people in attendance. So I work with the University of Pittsburgh and also with circles, and I've been helping a lot with educator circles. And I want to give a special thank you to Judy here, who has been helping to connect all of us, the researchers and practitioners, and that's been a big focus of her work. So today, that's what we're planning to do. And I wear both hats as well. I was previously a classroom teacher for about 8 years in elementary education, and then I moved into teacher preparation for about 10 years, and more recently have been exploring the dissemination of research to practitioners and thinking a lot about how we can make it more accessible. So that is a great transition into what we're going to be doing today. And thank you to our facilitators who are on this call, because they all helped and worked really hard at actually planning what we're doing today.
All right, so it is my task, one of my tasks for today is to kind of set the mood and make sure we're having leveled expectations before we actually start the work. And so when we're talking about our goals for today, we're of course going to explore new perspectives. We are combining groups that often don't have time and space or protected space to communicate and share ideas. So you will hear and learn of things from a different perspective. Please welcome all of those things. And then we're also going to aim to identify high priority problems of practice. So from both ends, research and education, what are the high priority issues and challenges that you're aiming to correct, minimize in your space? And then we're also going to brainstorm potential steps for thinking about how we might address those identified high priority problems. And so if you look at our Venn diagram over here to the right, what we're doing is we're making a space for policymakers, researchers, and practitioners, educators on the ground, to share information, to build community, to share perspectives. And ultimately, our goal is to identify innovative, ethical, and equitable approaches to generative AI use in PK-12 learning spaces. So that is a very, very large goal. And of course, we won't, solve all the problems today, but this is definitely a great start to some of the solutions that we all recognize, that are needed. And so as we're working and we're working together, we want to make sure that we remember to also reflect on cultural and institutional boundaries that are impacting our roles. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. So when you registered for this session, you were asked a couple of questions. And so one of them is, one you often get: what does everyone hope to discuss further or to learn more about pertaining to like a new perspective in this session? And so we pulled the questions and we kind of categorized them. And I do want to give you guys a moment or two just to kind of look and see what others may have said. And this can kind of help guide your thinking as we continue to talk. So we have a little section for professional learning for practitioners, community building and networking, real world implementation in K-12 learning spaces, and then research related aims and goals. So I'll give you guys a minute to kind of look over those. And we're also making sure that you're going to have access to this slide deck. We're going to drop the link in the chat so you can look at it and reference it as you need. And so those are a few seconds. And so please don't feel limited to these questions. If new things pop up as we're having these conversations, add them to the pool and we will work to find the answers or build the solutions from the answers together. So our session norms, we are in two different spaces. Some of us are coming from research and some of us are coming from practice, or some of us manage both. And we want to make sure that we have a very productive and respectful space that is conducive to us learning together, right? So we have proposed the following norms, and these norms are not the only norms we can have. If you have additional ideas for norms, please put them in the chat. But from our end, the facilitators, we would want everyone to be present. We want everyone to make space and take space, seek to understand, take risks, ask questions, engage in discourse, expect and accept non-closure. Once again, we're not solving all the problems tonight, and plan for future researcher practitioner connections and next steps. And then one I think that we forgot to add that I would love to have is take care of self. So this is the, I would tell my students during virtual learning, if you have to go to the restroom or if you need a snack, you're at home, don't announce it, just, handle business and come back. So same thing here. Make sure you take care of yourself. And so if you have any ideas for additional norms, drop them in. But one thing we do want to make sure that we emphasize is this. By us bringing together these two groups, part of the reason we decided to host this session and use this discussion format is because we've noticed that practitioners, educators, and researchers are often working to solve similar problems in different ways, but with no communication. And so we thought that's a smidgen problematic when we're all striving to create better learning opportunities for students. And so one thing that we do want to emphasize is that everyone has their dreams and their ideas as to what they could be doing and what the other group could be doing. But I want to kind of ground everyone a little bit with the boundaries. For example, in education, we could have a whole 2-hour talk about the phenomenal ideas I've had in my classroom that I was not able to implement because of policy, because of testing requirements, because of just lack of resources, right? And so when it comes to what's happening in classroom spaces and learning spaces, researchers especially ask and inquire about what boundaries exist, what prevents them from doing the magical thing. And number one, an educator will tell you, but also some of the reasons could be different things related to metrics, different things related to resource access, permission from administrators at the school level or district level. So there are definitely boundaries that kind of guide what happens in an education learning space. So that conversation, we encourage that to happen. And then on the researcher side, from the educator perspective, I can tell you, well, if I need a tool that allows me to, send my kids to the moon, why can't the brilliant researchers create it for me? And of course, any researcher would say, what? That's not practical. I can't get funding for that. And so that is one heavy boundary that can sometimes limit what happens on the researcher side, making sure that they have funding and there is a vested interest in what they are trying to create and build, right? So with those thoughts in mind, make sure we manage our expectations of each other, but then also remember one of our main goals here is to build community so we can ask the questions as to why we have the ideas and we don't necessarily always see them in implementation. And so hopefully that makes sense. But if it doesn't, you will be in a room shortly with a phenomenal facilitator, as well as another researcher or another educator, and you can have that conversation as a part of your discussion. Oh, I forgot I had to talk about this too. So One thing to definitely emphasize is that everyone that has been invited to this space is an expert in their role. And this is something I will speak to the educators briefly. You are experts in how education happens on the ground with students. So please dig deep into that and stand strongly in that. But as we're having communication back and forth, a researcher or an educator may just kind of get stuck on how to phrase or how to appear in the conversation and, assert their ideas. And so, of course, since you're working with facilitators that are educators, we gave you guys sentence frames to help guide this discussion. So what I hear you saying is, for clarification, for my perspective is another one. One question I have is, the same types of strategies we use to support student learners. So that is there for you as well in the slide deck.
Thank you so much, Crystal. So I get to cover the logistics. How do we make this all happen today, especially since we are connecting virtually? So again, she's already outlined what our goals are. So what we've decided based on the number of people that we have participating is that we have enough time to have about 2 breakout sessions. We debated a lot between having more time with the same people or more time with the multiple people and how we might be able to go deep into conversations. So this is how we ended up with the decision to have 2. And if we have future opportunities to do this format again, then we might explore other ways and other amounts of time with our breakouts. What we've also done is intentionally put 1 facilitator in each of the breakout room and then tried to have at least 2 to 3 researchers and 2 to 3 practitioners that will circulate among the rooms. So the researchers and the facilitators will stay together and be paired in the same room the entire time. And then the practitioners will have 1 rotation. And so we won't really get to have those smaller group conversations with everyone here, but at least we'll have a chance to meet a variety of people. And then we'll come back together in the whole group session to debrief. And following that, there might be opportunities to reconnect and talk to other people further. So when we move into the breakouts, we're trying to keep it manageable where everyone has an opportunity to speak. So the facilitator has multiple roles. First of all, the facilitators are not just there to do time management, but they're also going to have an active role in the conversation. So that's really important to emphasize because, as you've heard, we all have a lot of hats and different perspectives that we'd like to share today. They might also prompt with some clarifying questions, but the questions don't have to come from the facilitators. So you have questions that come up, you're welcome to ask your questions. That's why we're here. But the biggest thing is just we want to moderate so that everybody does have an opportunity to speak. And then we're going to try to do some member checking at the end of the session where we can synthesize and summarize what the big ideas are that are discussed to make sure that we meet our goals. So we're anticipating 30 minutes, but we have tried to put in a little buffer where we will probably wrap up a little sooner than 30 minutes just to make sure we have that transition and we don't lose anybody in the wrong rooms. So that's the format that we're using. When you get into the small group session and the breakout, each person will have the opportunity to share again about their role and what they're doing. Because the chat, we did it and it wasn't as personal. So we'll have that opportunity to share about yourself. And then in your mind, you have a thought about the prompt that you've responded to in the registration, or just that you've seen from the first slide that Crystal showed about what we're hoping to gain from the session. So we're hoping that you will have like a 1-minute moment to share a little bit about that. We're anticipating about 2 minutes for each person total to share these things and explain their perspective. Kind of thinking about it like a debate format where, although we're not necessarily here to debate, but you have your 2 minutes, you say your part, each person has a chance to say their part, and then you can go back and address questions and follow up with some of the things that are said. So are there any questions about that structure before we jump into it? And as Judy said, yes, at the end, we'll also have the chance to share. So we've shared the slide deck and you'll have access to this. This is just the room assignments of how we've broken it up. I've pre-registered the Zoom to have all of the rooms with the right people, hopefully, but that doesn't mean it will work perfectly because not everyone might be here right now. So we'll take a look at that as we open them, but you can always refer back to these slides. And again, I just want to reiterate that it's really only the team of practitioners who are assigned together that will be circulating between the two breakouts. So just to give you some more food for thought before we jump in, these were the responses that were from practitioners when we registered and answered the question about thinking about AIED. What are the problems of practice that you would like to discuss with researchers? So you can take a moment and see some of the comments of what they're hoping to talk about. So this will help to shape our conversation, thinking a lot about professional learning and the perceptions of AI, policy, and real-world implementation. And then these are the responses from researchers, thinking about the research that you're currently doing. What would you like practitioners to have a better understanding about with regard to AI and ed? And the researchers who are here today, we've intentionally invited you because of a focus on ethics and equity with AI. That's something that we all think is very, very important in this space. So that's something I see really centering a lot of these responses here that we're really hoping that we can discuss further. And so with that said, I am going to go back to that original slide here about what we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to open up the breakout rooms, and then you'll be able to follow along with the slide deck. If you just came in, I'm going to drop the link one more time to the slides. And we'll do our best to keep our responses brief so everyone has a chance to participate. So hopefully you received an invitation to join your rooms.
Oh.
I think we're still waiting for people to come back. I'm not sure if everyone's back or what happened.
Hey, Bill, can I ask you a question while we're waiting?
Of course.
I'm really interested in what you're doing with your teachers and your schools, how you're training them. Do you have a suggested program that you use?
Yeah, we're trying to take a little more holistic approach as opposed to like we're not adopting a specific program. We are trying to like look at it in terms of how do we create a culture where it's okay, right? And so whatever tool you want to hold on to, like
I love that.
yeah. So that's kind of where our head is right now.
Welcome back, everyone. We are going to have a debrief, but I just wanted to share a couple logistical kinks that we're sorry that apparently there were some issues with the registration link not working. So some of the people who did sign up to attend were having difficulty accessing it and had to try multiple times. So there were some people who just weren't able to join for that reason today. If your room was smaller than anticipated, that's part of the problem we had. And then we had some other people that just had some reasons that they at the last minute couldn't be here. So the distribution wasn't as perfect as we hoped, but hopefully the conversation was still rich. Take a moment and look at slides 14 through 23 if you want to get a sense of some of the takeaways that were presented, and we'll let each facilitator kind of go through that, and Nick is going to take our debrief under control here.
Hello, hello. Oh, there's another one. I had to, oh, okay, someone is coming in. I just wanted to honor, I saw a comment there. First of all, I mean, this was amazing and deep discussions. It's been awesome just talking to individuals, both researchers and practitioners. I do want, I will kind of select each of our facilitators to kind of synthesize the big ideas from the GOT slides and from the conversations. I'll start with Crystal.
Okay, I'm a tad delinquent because I was typing long form notes is how I process. So I'll add the sticky notes in. But some of the questions we had was how to equip teachers to be intentional about instructional design and just their processes while using generative AI. And so one of the problems that was ultimately addressed is, just how do we give teachers back their time so they can be with students? What does that look like? And how many ways can we create solutions or tools for them to support, accomplishing more clerical tasks and getting back into a space where, it's one-on-one instruction. And so there were some things shared about some things that are happening across the country, not the country, the world. And then, a deeper dive into how do we automate specific processes? How do we provide teacher support? And how can we create even something like an on-demand coach to where all of the knowledge that possibly sits in, a department, like for example, in instructional technology where I've worked, all of the knowledge that we had that we wanted to get to the educators, but there were only 3 people working an entire district, right? How do we take what is there in that space and have it to where it's accessible, but also accurate and not necessarily causing more harm? So we had conversations about how to apply those concerns in that way. And so that was kind of like the gist of what we had in our breakout.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I'll save myself for last, so I'll move to Valerie.
Thank you. I unfortunately, or fortunately, however, we did not have any other practitioners besides myself. And so Michael and Janice and I had a conversation in regards to the thoughts of where we are as educators using AI in the classroom and in school environments. We talked about the cultural issues that might be affecting the indigenous tribes. But as I said, that was not a practitioner researcher conversation. It was kind of an off the cuff conversation because it was just the 3 of us. So I will defer to the next person.
Thank you so much. And so I'll transition to Alicia, AC.
Yeah. All right. So in our first breakout room, I think the theme was the different ways to define accessibility and the different ways to think about accessibility. So when you're having conversations, whether you're in your practitioner role or your research role, think about how the teacher or practitioner you might be working with is defining it, but also how you've defined it in your work. Because what we talked about was, if you're using a tool, is it being or rolling out a tool in your district or school? How intuitive is it? Is it easy to use? Is there trust and privacy data issues that your teachers or practitioners or even parents and families or students are thinking about it? The same type of technological issues that we might have had in the past are still going to exist today, even with like accessibility of the internet, for example. And then it could go as far as, will teachers actually use it, right? Use the tool, use whatever you're offering here. And in the second breakout room, we talked a lot about the student perspective, or, the teacher-student relationship. And in students using the tool, or getting students to use the tool, how much computer science do they need to use? We always talk about literacies from maybe perhaps the media literacy angle, but also in this CS for All environment, how much of that needs to, are we making the right connections and dots? But at the end of the session, I really, really appreciated the question or the thought of how these conversations and how these connections that we're making today really force us to think about what the purpose of schooling is at the end of the day, right? This is not going to be the last time that a tool comes and disrupts our lives or our students' lives or our teachers' lives. And so coming back to the question, or, why is this assessment the assessment? Why is this activity the assessment? Why is this the research project when we're partnering with teachers and educators? So I just want to thank my team for those 2 breakout rooms and pass it on to the next person. Not sure who.
think
That would be Cassandra. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so we had very similar sentiments. A big piece was thinking about how there's a lot of teachers who actually don't have any training happening, even though there's this assumption that teachers are familiar with the AI and how it works and the different types of AI, all of the behind the scenes. We had a teacher in our session who said that there's been 0 training or conversation, and it's a lot of interest that comes from the teachers themselves who are early adopters of technology, and they have that interest. But they're not necessarily being leveraged right now as leaders. There were some really great suggestions of different pathways for getting those early adopters in more of a leadership role. Like there was a mention of an AI advisory board committee where teachers could apply into this role and help to come up with some of the policy and solution-oriented thinking. And another option was that there's some researchers exploring micro-credential programs to help with AI literacy, and specifically thinking about issues with equity and ethical concerns to help educate teachers. But a lot of those types of programs, teachers don't necessarily know about or have access to within the school district level. So how do we make those types of resources more commonly accessible and disseminated so that people can get the information they need? That was one piece. Concerns about student safety, the surveillance and the data that's being collected. So educating both the educators and the students about what's happening behind the scenes that they might not be aware of, and thinking more again about policy and ways to protect the students. And I like to quote that was, it's okay to say no to some of these tools, and thinking about more slowing down the adoption process. So maybe not necessarily closing that door, because we did talk in my next group about the opportunities that can come, and that we don't want to miss some of the opportunities that could help to improve learning and change the way we think about that institution of schooling and some of those comments. But just kind of thinking about that, there's this huge push to sell, that it's going to save you all this time and you're going to not need to do all these things as a teacher anymore. Is that really true? Are there more effective ways we can think about moving slowly and rolling in these tools in a way that actually supports and reinforces positive learning? And so in my second group, that was a big focus too, is about the early adopters and some of the ways that we've had approaches initially with digital literacy. And are there other ways that we should center those approaches to think about pedagogical problems and what's effective for students and teachers? And I guess just thinking again about misinformation and protecting the privacy of kids. So there's just a lot of worries in that regard. And I'll send it back to Nika.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
and Valerie has her hand raised.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say.
I'm sorry, but I did not realize we were doing the second one at the same time. So, and I'm not necessarily going to go through what we talked about in our second breakout. We had several educators in there, with practitioners in there, with researchers, and the topic had to do with the space in as far as where are educators with AI. And to summarize the breakout room, what we came away with is the fact that educators across this country are being charged with so much mandated, so many socioeconomical issues. We are charged with the SELs, with what goes on with students, that AI genuinely has taken a back seat and it's never surfaced for a lot of educators. And part of what this session today was and incorporated is to have that dialogue, to have that conversation. And in my second breakout session, we addressed the fact that perhaps as researchers, you're currently doing research based on whatever you put in for your grant, whatever you're going forward with, but having that conversation with educators in a space where they're not. Educators across this country may or may not be on point with AI, but I think there's a disconnect, a gap in recognizing from researchers that not every educator is sitting in where the researcher may think or need them to be. And my hope in this session was that we have genuine conversation addressing the needs of educators and matching them with the needs of the researchers. Because as much as we love researchers and research, if it's not applied or introduced, and part of what I heard in the other conversation from another group is, and I said this to my researchers, educators are not given professional development when it comes to AI. They go in a classroom and they're expected to know it. But who is educating the educator on how to educate the child in AI? But research says that we're going to look at how AI is being used in education K through 12. But it's not addressing the genuine needs of the educator in that classroom. It's addressing the needs of the educator who has written the proposal. So I'm hoping from this session that we have continued dialogue, that we have perhaps, if need be or accessible, another session or a few more so we can genuinely address the needs of hopefully the practitioner. Thank you.
Wow, that was very powerful. I'm going to talk about just what our group talked about, but as we do that, and if someone could go back to the slides, because I definitely, as we're closing out, we're going to talk kind of whole group as well. But as we're closing out in these final moments, if you could direct yourself, we do have some takeaway slides on 24 and 25. And then if you want to share your contact information, if you're comfortable with staying connected with those who spoke during the session, to add your contact information as well. So I definitely want to direct you to those areas as I talk through, our group in our discussion. So first of all, I did hear about the professional development and the teachers, and it's so interesting because I've kind of straddled this fence between being a researcher, finishing my dissertation specifically on those areas, and then actually being a practitioner implementing AI. So it's interesting that what you are talking about is again being reaffirmed through pure research. It's the same thing, in terms of the lack of professional development and the need for it to be supported at the district level. And that's so interesting because that's why I'm going to continue to shout out Dr. Melissa Moore and what the process that she went through, because that is just such a grounded process in terms of ensuring you have buy-in from the school board, down. It's going to be essential for that. So it's interesting to, again, see, my research started, years ago, and to see it continuously reaffirmed. Unfortunately, though, right? Because it shouldn't be, I started my research in like 2019. We should still be talking about teachers not having access to professional development. I mean, you can look at that, right? And as a part of that, just going into our groups, the first one, and I'll theme it out, was the media literacies and the different literacies and being overwhelmed with literacies and almost drowning in them. And, is there kind of a streamline point? Is there a way we can connect them? And so I thought that that was just such an important part of that initial conversation that we had with group one. And then to theme out that second part, when it comes to the research, is that you see the researchers and going back through wanting to find connections, wanting to get, do the pedagogy, wanting to find out how we can interact and engage with AI in ways that support our students, buttressed against making sure that it isn't falling onto the teachers at the end of the rung to take care of all the work, which again goes back to, like I said, it was a kind of uncomfortable affirmation of the research like that I've done, but also an opportunity because we know collectively how we can move forward. And so as we're filling out those different sections, is there anyone else who felt affirmed by what they had been experiencing? Or are they, is there any concern or, optimism and hope from our conversations and kind of where you see yourself? So feel free to unmute. As others, I definitely want to direct you again to fill out those different sections of the slides.
I think just we lost a lot of people because of the time, but I think the biggest thing that you all have said is that we need to continue these types of conversations and address those disconnects that are still out there that we've been seeing in the research literature for a long time and that teachers have been feeling for a long time.
Yes, definitely. And so this was exciting. Like you said, we're 4 minutes kind of over. I know people are, having to transition out. Please fill out those sections if you can. I think, would you mind putting those slides just back up real quick for those who may have, as you're transitioning out? And again, thank you so much for just the engaging conversation. Hopefully we'll be making connections. And then Cassandra, did you have any closing notes as well?
I think the biggest thing is just thanking everybody for the valuable contributions today and really getting everybody to be more reflective on some of these problems of practice. And hopefully we can move forward from this with some new ideas or some better partnerships and collaborative approaches to thinking about it. And thank you to our rock star team of facilitators who not only facilitated the session, but to help plan the session and everything that went behind the scenes to get this, implemented so well today. So thank you to Valerie and Crystal, Nika. Thank you to AC. Thank you to Judy, and also to Kyle, who couldn't be here today. We so appreciate you.
Thank you.
I love some of these takeaways. I think more time is needed. I would have liked to be able to talk more. Another session would be good for me. Practical talk would be as great as well. Nice conversation.
Hate to head out. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
All right.
We can probably turn off the recorder.
Yes.